What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. Yet again, this far into November, there's still a lot of cool stuff coming out. And once again, we have some grimy, old school death metal to go over because this year has been absolutely dominated by death metal. That is not a complaint whatsoever.
Yeah, not at all.
This year is almost like a banner year for death metal, and we have yet another cool one to go over with the latest offering from Vastum, Inward to Gethsemane. This comes out on the 10th of November on 20 Buck Spin Records. This band formed in 2009 in San Francisco, California. This is their 5th album overall. I got into them with their 2nd album, Patricidal Lust, really dug it, and I probably picked it up just because it said 20 Buck Spin on the back, which is almost like a seal of quality these days.
Yeah, like back in the day when Roadrunner Records was a sign of greatness. Now you get 20 Buck Spin and a slew of other labels that if I were to pick up the album and say, ooh, this says 20 Buck Spin or Transcending Obscurity or something like that, chances are I already dig it because this label doesn't miss.
Yeah, especially here lately. And, well, I mean, this band has a really cool pedigree. It features current and former members of bands like Hammers of Misfortune, Necrotic, Mortuous, and even Acephalix. So we got a lot of California-based bands there that are awesome and weird and strange. And with this act, this is just grimy, old-school death metal that sounds murky and slimy and just gross and cavernous. Kind of just the way we like it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of those adjectives used to describe music, especially this one in particular.
Now, I was a big fan of their last one, so needless to say, when I saw that they were coming out with a new one, I definitely wanted to check it out. This band is kind of noted, again, for their kind of just gross old school style, lots of incantation, autopsy, very comparable to more, recent acts like Phrenolith or even Mortiferum.
Or Phobophilic or Fossilization.
Yeah, actually, yeah, both of those bands too. So yeah, I knew we were going to cover this one, and I'm really glad I did. This is, again, just gross and murky and riffy as hell. Like, this definitely has, a lot of old school love in it. Like, there's a lot of, old Bolt Thrower on here. Mm-hmm. And specifically older Bolt Thrower, the first 3 albums. This kind of hangs on the groove, but it has blast beats. It has really cool off-time drum patterns. And when it gets down to those chuggy grooves, you can't help but to be reminded of, just awesome albums like Realm of Chaos, especially.
Yeah.
So this album opens up with a really just grimy number, In Bed with Death, which is an interesting title in itself. Apparently, eroticism is kind of part of this band's themes. And, I mean, at least death is kind enough to give some foreplay, because there's a little bit of, an ambient kind of droning start before all the riffs come in and just cave in your skull. And once they do, man, this is just a gross, heavy album.
Giant cavernous atmosphere, evil tremolos, cool harmony tags, mostly evil, and just the atmosphere is just huge, and it just sounds disgusting. Kind of like being in bed with death, I suppose, would be.
And the 90s death metal tropes are kind of all over here. There are definitely a lot of, of course, incantation moments, because, I mean, that's kind of one of the bands you kind of model yourselves after if you're doing cavernous death metal, but also, Cannibal Corpse. Actually, I think I wrote down Cavernous Corpse at a certain point here, because you get those, kind of, the bleeding level kind of riffs where you get those cool hammer-ons and big hooks on there, and just these stomping, brutal grooves. This album actually gets brutal as in nasty breakdowns. Mm-hmm. It's not just a kind of a death doom sound. It's very chuggy and heavy at times.
And Priapic Chasms. That's the one with the big one with the brutal death breakdown. And Stillborn Entity, of course, has, in my opinion, those Cannibal Corpse grooves.
Oh, 100%. And this band is really cool about atmosphere and even the rhythms on here. Priapic Chasms has this strange off-time rhythm. It's got a hitch in it. And how the riff follows it is just, I don't know, it's kind of sluggish and weird and just strange. It kind of reminded me of Cauldron Black Ram. Their last album, yeah. When we reviewed that forever ago, there was a hitch in one of their songs.
I remember that.
Just I don't even get the time signature on that, but it's cool that they're doing it and how they let that riff kind of snake its way through there. It's pretty awesome. And you get kind of that same effect, though they kind of pair it off switching to like just droning tremolo riffs and a slow kind of mortiferum sort of sound. And you start getting the more brutal side of them too. Like you get some more like palm muted chugs. When they decide to do a breakdown on here, generally, at least in the past, what I got from them was like more of a straightforward Death Doom kind of breakdown. Like that was kind of the go-to one, and they are on here, but there's a lot of breakdowns in here that just scream flat out old school death metal and at times almost like brutal death metal.
In Vomitus, actually. Most of that song is a straight bolt thrower worship groove anyway, but that breakdown is exceptionally fucking heavy.
Oh, dude, when they halftime that thing, dude, it's absolutely gross. But one of the cool things I think they do, and it contributes to the atmosphere, is the vocals. The vocals on here, we have a two-pronged attack. Daniel and Layla on here combine often for just these nasty, cavernous growls and screams. Layla does like a lot more higher register stuff, like it's these ghostly wails. On Vomitus especially, there are these just horrific screams in the background, and then he comes in and puts like a low growl accent on it. And it's like sort of like give and take in the blend. It adds, to this kind of just creepy vibe on here because they sound like they come from like different points in the room.
Her goblin screams sound like they're coming at you, whereas his growls kind of sit behind you. So it's really that whole thing is just like blah.
And then there's the chanting. There is a lot of chanting on here, like almost sort of like a transitional thing where, like towards the end of a track, you'll start hearing the I don't know what he's saying. It's creepy, it's evil, furniture may or may not have levitated for a second, but it adds to that creepy atmosphere because this doesn't have like, I think, a lot of synths on it. Like a lot of this seems like it's done with like feedback, droning riffs, and then these weird chants on here to give it like a very creepy and unsettling vibe. And in terms of unsettling and creepy, like not much gets creepier on this album than the last track, Corpus Fractum. That is a dissonant, ugly song, chock full of just horrific vocals and droning riffs, and it's just kind of evil sounding.
Yeah, that droning riff break with the chanting and then like the moaning choir on top of it, like the harmonized moaning choir, just like whoa.
Yeah, Layla does some clean vocals on that one, and they're just these harmonized chants, and they sound absolutely ghostly. And on top of that, I think you have also just the standard chants. Like everyone that hung out around Damien and the Omen. Like that's the kind of stuff they sang to him, as he was going to bed. That was his lullaby every night. But this album also has like a little bit more thrashy stuff on here.
Yes.
Like honestly, I don't remember that being as prominent on the last one. Indwelling Acheron, this is just a flat out old school, I wouldn't even say like necessarily 100% early 90s, like almost late 80s. Like there's a big thrash backbone, like early Death, Pestilence, but you also have that cavernous death metal sound, like it kind of shifts from those thrashier, like more machine gun riffs to like slower, more plodding ones. You
like a stomp.
Deep tremolos, a la Morbid Angel. But this song stands out because it has like a decidedly more thrashy vibe, and the breakdowns on it even kind of have like a little bit of a thrashy vibe too. Like you get those kind of like off-time little thrash breakdowns you'd hear in like early Sepultura and such.
So this record is mixed by Greg Wilkerson and then mastered by Brad Boatwright. And of course, we just brought up Brad Boatwright on Strigoi. These guys have figured out a way to make this record sound equally aggressive and evil at the same time. And usually those two things, you don't often get both those things. Like you get usually a record that's either A, decidedly evil and dark and doomy, or B, an aggressive record with like some flourishes of dark and evil. But having those two combined together really makes this entire record stand out.
Yeah, it's got a thick, murky sound, but the guitars have like a good, hefty chunk to them. Like even though they are kind of muddy, like kind of that kind of Death Doom sort of like murk and mud that again you'd hear on bands like Mortiferum. It has that, but again, there's like a real fucking heft to it. And when you combine that with like the drums have a lot of reverb on them, as do the vocals, as does everything, because this is cavernous death metal. It sounds like it was recorded in a damp cellar. Like it just sounds gross. Like if you listen to this album for too long in a bathroom, you will grow mildew in it.
Yeah.
And this entire album, I'd say, is like a little bit more groove laden across the board. Like, yeah, you have some faster moments. Again, like Indwelling Atron has like that thrashy backbone. But outside of that, like, there's not a tremendous amount of blast beats on here. And you do get like one really good aggressive kind of Autopsy style D beat on Stillborn Eternity, which I think is an absolute banger of a song. Like, it is really remarkable how catchy some of these songs are in terms of the riff work too. Like, I wouldn't say like overtly melodic, but they're just very well done. And lead play on here, I think, plays a lot, even though leads are generally very short and very dismal sounding. But again, that's something that adds to the atmosphere. And they come in like kind of infrequently. Like, you almost can't really predict where the leads are going to come in. Like, there really isn't like a giant setup for them. They just come in at a dreary bit of, you know, just misery to, you know, make it sound creepier again, and then they're off.
Yeah, if anything, it's just like a seasoning to some sort of riff, or like the beginning of a transition that they weren't sure what to do with, so they were like, fuck it, let's throw on a lead melody. And that's about all they appear, because I really wouldn't call anything on here a lead.
Yeah, there's maybe like one on here I would call like a flat out solo, but a lot of it is just, you know, adding to the harmonies and such, and just kind of, you know, adding another layer of just evil sounding murk on top of evil sounding murk. As for any like negatives on here, I really didn't have many, except for maybe Judas, which,
dude,
all right,
why?
Yeah, that was a bit of a tease. Like, it comes in with this isolated awesome, like, you know, death harmony. Like,
dude,
it sounds great.
That riff is nasty, and I was jamming it in the car on the way over here, and I was like, oh man, if they halftime this right now, it's going to be the grossest thing ever. And then it stops, and it ends up being like spoken word.
Oh, it's very God.
Yeah, like come on, that riff was fucking sweet.
I mean, it goes right into Indwelling Atron or Ardron or whatever the hell it is. And, you know, that's cool, but I mean, like, that is a riff that is almost too good for like an interlude right there. Like, it's so damn solid, and I feel like it's just kind of wasted right there.
It's just there to toy with you. Like, you like that? Too bad. Why?
And I wouldn't say that this album gets off to a slow start or anything, because the first two tracks I think are really good, but honestly, I think this is a more backloaded album, where the back half of this really just showcases everything they can do. The first two tracks, In Bed with Death and Prepik Chasms, it's kind of what I expected from them. It sounds very similar to a lot of stuff they've done before, and it's really good. But towards the back half, I think they kind of open up the wheelhouse, because while this maintains like that incantation sort of atmosphere and vibe, the riffs kind of get a little bit playful and a little bit strange later on, and I like that the album kind of opened up later. But yeah, right from the rip, it's still really good. But these are very minimal complaints, honestly, because everything else on here was just super good. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is another banger from Vastum. Honestly, I've liked everything I've heard from them, so they're kind of batting 1,000. If you're a big fan of, you know, Incantation, Mortiferum especially, or Mortiferum, I don't know. Mortiferum sounds better. I'm still on that. Anyway, it does. But they're a cool band regardless, and they kind of sound like this band, and if you're a fan of that, I'm pretty sure you dig this. This is just loaded with swampy riffs. It sounds gross and evil, and it sounds like at times it's trying to summon something in your house or your car or wherever the hell you're listening to it. It's just nasty, old school death metal, and if you love all that stuff, I'm reasonably sure you're going to dig this.
Yeah, I'm with Nick here. It's a 4, and it's a pretty solid 4. And I don't even necessarily agree with the fact that the back half was better than the first half. Like, I like pretty much everything except for that tease on Judas. What the fuck? I digress. It's riffy as all get out. There are a lot of catchy grooves. There's a lot of hooky moments that I didn't think there would be. The interplay with the vocals is really sweet. Again, having the growls and the higher goblin screams on, like, playing with each other is really kind of interesting. Yeah, it's murky, it's slimy, it's gross, it's unsettling at times. The creepy chants and the... right. Sound like the first time you take mushrooms.
Pretty sure I heard your name chanted once or twice in there. They definitely know where you live.
You're contacting me about my car's extended warranty. They are cooking on those guitars. A lot of crawling riffs. There's some like triple pick moments. Yeah, if you're a fan of, fossilization, mortiferum, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I don't care. I like that band. Morbid Angel, Incantation, all those things. If you're a fan of those bands, you're probably definitely going to dig this. If you've heard this band in the past, definitely check out this record.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It's also on our channel. But thrallsmetal.com is where you go to find Thralls Metal stuff. We have new shirts. We have old shirts that are discounted. And we even have some hats now. So if you're looking for our stuff, that is where to find it.
And as always with us, of course, we have a ton of stuff going on. Thralls of Metal is never without anything to do. Even though the album releases are going to slow down here, we're going to be working on our end-of-year lists. We finished the Judas Priest ranking. You should see that real soon. Just so grateful for all of you. Thank you for coming and hanging out. Nick, what do you got to say?
Pretty much the same thing. You guys all rule. You're the real heroes here, and we have a ton of stuff in store for you. So once again, thank you all, and we will catch you later.